And today we're going to learn the most famous story in the Bible, the Judgement of Solomon. What's the Judgement of Solomon? It's speaking about the two women who came with a baby. It's my baby, it's your baby, and Solomon made the judgment. Looks like a very simple story. If it's so simple, why we give him so much credit? And it could turn out very bad too. Then let's see how much I survive, and let's see if it goes.
Page.
It's on page 1394. It's chapter 3 of the book of Kings. Now, it's in the book of Kings. It doesn't start from the beginning of the chapter. It starts from the middle of the story, kind of. The beginning of the chapter, King Solomon is having a dream. God comes to him and he tells him, what do you want? I want to wish you. Whatever you want. What do you want? What was he asking? God offered them, ask whatever you wish for. What was he asking for?
He asked for wisdom.
For wisdom. Then God told him, because you didn't ask for money, you didn't ask to take revenge of your enemies, you didn't ask for your own honor, you asked only for wisdom. What to do? What is the wisdom?
Judge.
To judge the people honestly. He said, therefore I will not only give you wisdom, I will give you all of the above also. He was a very young man. How old was Solomon when he became a king?
Like 12 years old.
12 years old. That he said to God, I need wisdom to know what to do with the people. It's such a big people. What should I do with them? That was the dream. The Haftorah starts from chapter 3, number 15, that he woke up from the dream. And right next goes into the story what happened when he had, right after the dream, to prove that the blessing of God was fulfilled, that he was smart. Then we'll start from the beginning.
And you thought your bar mitzvah was hard, huh?
Yeah, you did.
Don't help me. Yeah. Go ahead.
Shlomo awoke, and only then he realized it was a dream. He then came to Jerusalem and stood before the Ark of the Covenant of God. He offered burnt offerings and peace offerings and made a feast for all his servants.
He came to offer offerings. That was before it was a temple, just an altar. Before that, in the beginning of the chapter, he mentions that he went to Givon. Givon was a place where there was a big altar there. And in Givon, it was the place of King Saul, the tribe of Benjamin. You know, King Saul and King David was a little rivalry. Judah and Benjamin, they were not exactly seeing things eye to eye. But he went there to offer offerings. He offered there 1,000 sacrifices. And then he came back and he offered the sacrifices. He kind of united the kingdom. He says, I'm with all of you. I'm not only with one and not with the other.
So he's doing these sacrifices through the priests. Obviously, he's not doing the physical sacrifices himself.
Obviously, first of all, 1,000 sacrifices, nobody can do himself. But yeah, I'm sure it was through the priests, yes. I'm not sure that regular people were not allowed to offer sacrifices on a regular altar, understand? Not in the temple. In the temple, you had to be a Kohen, a priest. But anywhere else could be, you were allowed to do it. Anybody could offer sacrifices.
But I thought there was only one place you could do those.
When it was a temple in Jerusalem, or it was the temple in Shiloh, then you were not allowed to offer sacrifices anywhere else. But when the temple was not around, you were allowed to offer sacrifices in other places too. This was during the time before the temple, between Shiloh and the Temple Mount. It was the limbo time of a good few years. And that's what it was. That's why he was offering sacrifices. Then came number 16.
Then two harlots came to the king and stood before him. One of the women said, "Please, my master."
Why the text points out they were harlots. Who cares? 2 women came to him. What do you think?
They might not place as much emphasis on the child.
Well, it's,
Why should the harlot not place emphasis on the child?
Maybe they wouldn't place too much emphasis on a person like a harlot
They
if it
weren't
wasn't
Jewish?
mentioned.
Or maybe, what he says, that's one of the explanation. That by the king, by Solomon, everybody deserves his time in court. No matter who you are, no matter what, from social background, everybody can come, and the king took his time to deal with them as much as he would deal with the most important people in the community. There is more psychological explanation, but that's what we found out of time. It's too long. Okay, number 17.
okay. One of the women said, "Please, my master, listen to me. I and this woman live in one house. I gave birth in the house. And on the 3rd day after I gave birth, this woman too gave birth, and we were together. There was nobody else in the house that could see what was going on. Just the 2 of us were in the house. This woman's son then died during the night because she laid upon him and crushed him. She then got up in the middle of the night and took my son from beside me while your maidservant was still asleep and laid him down in her bosom, and she put her dead son into my bosom."
Okay, you want to continue?
I got up in the morning to nurse my son, and look, he was dead. I then examined him in the morning, and look, he was not the son whom I had given birth to.
Okay. Looks terrible, sounds terrible, right? She lays to sleep, and she wakes up in the morning, it's not your child. That's what she says. The other woman says,
The other woman said, "No, my son is living. I'm sorry. My son is the living one, and your son is the dead one." The first woman said, "No, my son is the living one, and your son is the dead one." And they argued before the king.
okay. The other woman said, 1 second, something is missing here. My son,
No, my son is the living one, and your son.
that's a mistake in English. The first woman said, it's right, my son is the living one, and your son is the dead one. The other woman said, no, my son is the dead one, your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one.
Oh, so she said dead first.
So it's a matter of who says which first.
Very good. The English here is a mistake. I can't believe it, because here lays the whole story. She said, the first woman said, my son is the living one. No, I mean, not the first one. The second woman said, no, my son is the living one. Your son is the dead one. Then the first woman who attacked her said, no, your son is the dead one and my son is the living one. What do you learn from placing the order of the children? What do you learn from it?
The emphasis of where their focus is, or maybe what the main emphasis of the statement is.
Then what is this showing us?
What do you mean between dead
The
and
one
living?
that focuses on your dead son is the dead one is probably the one who's is probably lying, and it's her son that's actually dead.
Focus on life.
Because you would focus on your son and your child.
The one who is focused on life, every mother is focused on your child.
That's what I'm saying.
Then the one who speaks about life, your child is alive. She excuse, my child is alive. That's what is important to her. Your child is the dead one. That's number 2. That's secondary. The second one, the accuser, who says, my son is the living one. The accuser who blamed the other one for stealing the baby, she says, your son is the dead one. She concentrates on the dead. And my son is the living one. She said first the dead. Her child is actually the dead one. Then how we know that it means to say, when King Solomon heard them talking, he already heard who is who. How we know that? Because the next line is, number 23, is what? Yeah, go
The
ahead.
king then said, "This one says, this, my son, is the living one,
and your son is the dead one.
So the king said, bring your sword.
No.
And
And the other,
And the
other one says, no, your son is the dead
And the
one.
other one says, no, your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one.
okay, let's stop right here. The king repeated
Repetitive.
what he heard from the mothers. He summed up what is going on here. He only repeated the most important words, you understand? He says that you say, this woman says, my son is the living one, and the other son is the dead one. And this woman says, your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one. The king, by repeating how they put the order, he understood already who is who. That the rest of the story was just there to point out to everybody what he already knew. When you knew the story, when you learned the story, who you thought is the right one? Who is the right child? Who is the living child? In the story, until today, what were you thinking always?
That you couldn't tell.
From the whole story, who you thought is the child, and the living child, and who the dead child?
That was never my original thinking. My original thinking was the one who offered the child to the other one is the actual mother.
Yeah, but from you're right.
That's later.
You're right, but from these two, who was the real mother? Who was the one who said this and who said cut him, and who was the one who said no, take him? The first one who came with the story, or the second one who just said no, this is my child. The living one is my child.
It's the first one. The first one's the mother.
You say the first one is the mother? That's what everybody says.
No, the second one, you just said it. You just
But
made
the second one, who said first, this is my son is the living one?
Well,
And
we
this-
The
we
living
can't
one,
tell
I
from
thought
this
was the
because the English
This one
is
says it's the
confused,
first one.
and you're reading the Hebrew.
Oh, maybe I'm
Because the
confused by.
words are identical in
The one
English.
that says living
If
is
you
the
look
The
at
order.
line 22, which is reversed? That's what we're.
The
that's why-
mistake is the second one.
Right, so the second one's emphasizing the death.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
second one
So
actually.
That's it, that's
So the
your child.
second one actually
No.
says, your son is
No,
the dead one, my
that's
son
not
is
the
living
second
one.
No,
one.
it's the first one.
That's the first one who answers back.
So the one
Right?
who answers
oh.
back says, your son is the dead one, my son.
Exactly.
Right.
The one who answers back is the one who came with the first story. The accuser.
The first.
The accuser came with the story. I was sleeping, and I had a living child, and this child, she slept on your child, and she killed them, and she switched around.
So the one who's saying, I got up in the morning to nurse my son, and look, he was dead.
She said, with this word, she said the truth. My son, and he was dead. That you say what I'm saying? The woman, the accuser, was the liar. She made up a story.
The first one, yeah.
Because the idea that a woman should switch around and take another child to raise him just because she cannot handle that somebody else has a living child is not normal. That she came up with her own story. She made up the story. And how King Solomon saw it, by repeating what they say, he really points out where the problem is. He says, Zot omeret, this one says, my son is the living one, and your son is the dead one. That was the accused one said it, the defender. And then he turned to the accuser and said, and you say, your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one. It means you're concentrating on the dead. She concentrated on life, and she concentrated on death. What you say first, that's what counts. What you're concentrating on. There is a similar story, in the Bible once, that two tribes, Gad and Reuben, came to Moses and they said they want to stay on the other side of the Jordan. They didn't want to enter the land of Israel, right? Mm-hmm. That they told them, there is a lot of, why they wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan?
Livestock. Land.
They had a lot of livestock, and there was a lot of grass on the other side of the Jordan. They said, let us stay here. We'll build stables for the animals and homes for the children. You hear? Moses, when he repeated today, he told them, guys, your first build is also the children and stables on your animals. If you want, by this statement you saw them right then, the first one to go to exile, not the tribe of Gad and Reuben. What needs to go to exile? The first one to assimilate. When business comes first, there are special sessions that they do for business people. And they ask them, what's more important to you, business or family? Everybody says family. And then during the session, they show them what is really important to them. And now the children are the last online, not the first. They say it are the first, but really they are the last. By the end of the session, everybody is crying. Because we think it's politically correct to say it, but really it's not the truth. Then here is the same thing. What are you concentrating? It's not, first of all, don't be busy with somebody else. Your son is dead and my son is alive. Say what is yours. My son is alive. What happens to your son? No, I don't know. Then by this, King Solomon already knew the truth. But he had to prove it to others. He had to prove to other people that he knows who is whom. That's why he took the risk, because if he wouldn't know the truth, this story could play out in many ways. It didn't have to be that one woman should say, call them. It didn't have to be that. If both of them are merciful people, say, no, we're not cutting the baby, then the king would come out like an idiot, right? Can you imagine if both women say,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, cutting the baby? Woo, you're the king? Go to Cheder. What's wrong with you? Where's your mother to slap you? Then King Solomon wouldn't come out such a chacham, right? He would look really terrible. What a king. Oy, oy, oy. Let's take him back to school. King? He's cutting babies? What kind of an idiot is that?
That wasn't their nature. That's why it was written this way, because that wasn't their nature.
King Solomon's luck that it worked out. But he knew also that the one who is the liar, she doesn't care for life. That's why she can say such a thing. That's why she can switch things like this. Accuse other people, steal another person's child. That's a person who doesn't care for anything. Okay, let's now, after we talked already about the whole story, let's read it inside.
Rabbi, did King Solomon also know that because of the wisdom he was given, he knew how this was going to play out ahead of time?
I don't know if he knew how to play out, but he wanted to bring out the truth in public. Everybody should be able to appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Number 24, I think.
So the king said, bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king. The king said, cut the living child in two and give half to one woman and the other half to the other woman.
Okay, let's cut off the baby and give 2 halves. Go ahead.
The woman whose son was really living, no. The woman whose son was really the living one said to the king, please, my master, give her the living child, but do not kill him, for her compassion was roused for her son. But the other one said, let him be neither mine nor yours, cut him. The king then responded and said, give the living child to the first woman, and do not kill him. She is the mother.
Then what happened? He relied, King Solomon relied on the motherly instinct that she will not be able to handle the idea that her child should be caught. He said, better give him up than kill him. There is a story about 2 mothers who were looking for a shidduch for the daughters. Mrs. A had a daughter who needed to marry Mr. B, Mrs. B. That they sent it a letter to the neighboring city. There is a yeshiva there. Sent us 2 boys. Need a shidduch. Fine. They sent them a letter back. Tuesday, 4 o'clock. Wait by the train station. They are arriving. 2 mothers are waiting there with gifts and this. Lo and behold, only 1 boy shows up. one chassan. Both mothers are holding him from both sides. It's for my daughter. It's for my daughter. It's for my daughter. As a totzach, screaming, yelling. Then they have to go to the rabbi. And the rabbi said, you know what? We have such a story in the Bible. We'll do what the Bible says. Let's cut him in half. Then one woman says, no, I feel so bad. The other woman says, cut him in half. Then the rabbi said, this is the mother-in-law. But the idea of cutting in half is a statement that you don't care. It was 150 years ago, when the Reform movement started in Germany, some rabbis said, let's establish separate Jewish communities. The Reform should have their own, we should have our own. Let's cut it in half. Others said no. Let's keep it together, because when we are together, we are going to save the situation. The more enlightened Jews will have to accommodate the more religious Jews. It's one community. We will influence each other. The moment you make two types of synagogue, the moment you make two types of communities, it's over. There were rabbis who were on one side and rabbis on the other side. Who was right, you think?
One community.
The rabbi's philosophy was one. The Jewish people are one unit and cut in half. There was once some rabbi in California wanted to open a school for children from only from Hasidic homes. That they don't have television in the house. A cheder. Only for us. You know what I mean? For us, whatever us means in every community. And kids that the mother is this, and the father is this, and the grandfather. They called the Rebbe's secretary. They didn't even make it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe's secretary says, you're working a school, not welcoming every Jewish child? He says, if a little Abraham, Avrem, would not be accepted in school because his father was Terach, he wouldn't have a Jewish people. Because one child, that his name is Abraham, his father was nothing to be proud of, nothing to write home. And he went to school, he became the father of the Jewish people. Judaism looks that we cannot cut off anything, because you never know what will come out from this child, or from his children. You bring somebody you embrace somebody, and therefore, in Chabad schools, the Rebbe's directions were, you never, only when it becomes a total disaster, you do everything possible to save a Jewish child. You welcome him, you try to work with them. No such thing as throwing out. What do you mean you throw out a Jewish child? Because when you lose them, you don't only lose them, you lose his children, and his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. Maybe Moshiach is waiting to come out from them. What do you mean The idea of cutting comes from a sense that it's not mine. If it would be mine, I wouldn't cut out. And that's what we really learn, the message from these stories. Who said it? The woman who is not a child, call them, I don't care, it's not mine. If it's yours, you never caught anything. Let's continue, number 28.
All of Israel heard about the case that the king had judged, and they were in awe of the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was with him to carry out true justice. Then King Shlomo reigned over all Israel, for all the people willingly accepted his sovereignty.
And then King Solomon was one of his stories of his wisdom, that he was able to find out who the child belongs truly. But the desire from King Solomon, because not always in court is actually the truth. There is the truth of the court and the truth. And the judge might say, you might be right, but I need proofs. Such a proof not necessarily would go in the court. But King Solomon, because he was the king and the judge, he could apply any type of techniques that he wanted to prove the truth. There is a story about once in Israel in the 1920s, it was a Jew who was respected by all the neighboring Arabs. Every time they had a dispute between the Hamulas, it's called, the tribes, used to come to him. Once was a dispute. They were two cows who gave birth in the same stable, and one of the babies, one of the calves died, and the other one was nursing for both mothers. It was a fight to who belongs this living thing. And by the tribes, when it's getting into mine, yours, mine, it becomes a matter of honor, a matter of I said, you said, there is no end to it. Then they decided to go to this Jew. He says, you know what? Leave by me the calf. Come in 2 days, and in this time, we will prove the truth. It was next. They all arrived from both tribes, ready with the swords, ready for a war. If we are right, we'll go all the way. And he, meanwhile, ordered 6 people, very strong men, with a little boat, little kayak, whatever it is, by the water, and the whole parade is going. This little calf, and the 2 cows, and everybody else. It's a whole. They come to the water. He picks up the little calf. He jumps on the boat with them, and he orders the 6 people, go, and try to move the boat as fast as possible, faster. And the 2 cows, the 2 mothers, animals started to run after the baby in the water and trying to go, and one of them, after a while, one of them gave up, and the other one was going. That he didn't have to say anything. He stopped, and everybody started to applaud. It was clear who the mother is. Now, the motherly instinct is something that God instilled in humanity. He didn't wait for us. Whatever it was very important for God, He didn't wait for human beings to understand on their own. Oh, I come to the conclusion, I should love my child. No. Even God wanted that parents should raise their children, that He put in their DNA that they love the children, do anything for the children. It's not necessarily the true on the opposite side. Children will not necessarily do everything for the parents. Not at all. They say one parent can raise 10 children. 10 children cannot take care of one parent. We all know it's how true it is. But but this is not unique for human beings. That's animals have it too, right? What is unique for human beings that animals do not have in relationship with parent and children? Grandchildren. You ever saw an animal taking his grandchildren for a walk? For ice cream?
Nature.
Grandchildren is a unique concept for humanity. There was a rabbi, anytime when somebody came and told them, Rabbi became a grandfather, he told them, oh, now you join the club of human beings. Children, everybody has children. Doesn't take much to have children, to have grandchildren. In Judaism, the obligation of raising a Jewish child is not only on the parents, it's also on the grandparents. Et bneichem ve'et bnei bneichem. You have to raise Jewish grandchildren. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs wrote once a book. The title was, when he became the chief rabbi of England, he wanted to wake up the community about Jewish education. That he wrote a book, the title was, Are we going to have Jewish grandchildren? Yeah, we all have Jewish children. We're going to have Jewish grandchildren. And he said that created a conversation that changed all of England. The numbers, when he came to become a rabbi, it was 25% of Jewish kids went to Jewish day schools. When he left, it was like 58%, like huge.
That's when he gave his speech here in Cleveland. Remember, he was talking about when he was going to become knighted by the Queen, and they had a certain date, and he said he had to refuse the date. He said, I can't make it on that date. Why? Because he was opening a Jewish day school.
Exactly.
And that comes before anything.
Exactly. But what I want to point out is that grandparents don't realize how much of effect they have on the grandchildren. Because if the parent, the child has his fights, you tell them to go to sleep, do your homework, this. With the grandchildren, there's a certain openness from grandchildren to grandparents that the influence that they get by the grandparents is unbelievable. And it's clear. There's a clear air. There is nothing in between. No fights, no anger, no feeling bad. You were not nice to me when I were young. All of this nonsense and garbage of psychological problems that we all go to the psychiatrist for are not existing by grandparents. And therefore grandparents have a huge influence and obligation to take care of the grandchildren. Then what's the job of the grandparents? Why God gives us life to be grandparents? Is to raise the new generation, to make sure that they're going in the right way. For today, we will stop right here, and God willing, we will see you next week.